Hello everyone. I am Arushi Bassi, an international relations student from the War Studies Department at King's College London. I am currently interning with Art for Refugees, and the topic I have chosen to highlight is the reintegration of children in Northern Uganda after the LRA conflict. I chose to apply for this internship because I was inspired by the mission of Art for Refugees to bring awareness about post conflict areas. I wanted to learn the art of journalism in the sphere of international relations, as this has been my keen interest. Throughout this internship, I took two journalism courses that broadened my understanding and also developed my multimedia communication skills by writing an article, making an infographic, and recording a podcast. The reason I chose to focus on the reintegration of children in northern Uganda is because I believe children and young adults are the future of tomorrow. The events that impact the lives of children directly have an impact on the world around us because these children grow up to be adults while struggling with the post conflict situations. So it was important for me to highlight the challenges that children who were abducted during the 20-year conflict in Uganda are now facing as adults returning to the society. I wanted to draw attention to the fact that these problems in post conflict communities impact the past, present, and the future lives of children, likely shaping their identity and contribution to the society. My work not only talks about the children's traumatic experiences during wartime, but also showcases the progress in their reintegration and, most importantly, explains the different psychological, economic, and social barriers that stand in the way of their well being. I hope I'm able to bring awareness to the situation in northern Uganda and positively impact the efforts being undertaken to help the community. Let's dive into a brief history of the conflict in Uganda. The region saw struggles between many rebel groups, tribes, and organizations, like in the case of the Bush War, which lasted from 1980 to 1986. The Ugandan government of that time was led by an infamous Acholi leader whose regimes brought hardships to citizens who did not share his ethnicity. At the end of the Bush War, a prominent rebel group called the National Resistance Army defeated the government, and its leader, Yoweri Museveni, became the president. This ignited fear among Acholi people from northern Uganda who believed that the new government would be harsh on them because of the previous government's brutalities. Amidst this background, a 26-year-old student, Joseph Kony, claimed he could communicate with spirits, and this motivated him to form the Lord's Resistance Army to fight President Yoweri's government. Their goal was to establish a new government based on Acholi principles and Kony's interpretation of the 10 Commandments of the Bible. This struggle of power between the LRA and the Ugandan People's Defense Forces caused massive economic, social, and political damage. According to the UN, 2.5 million people were displaced from their homes and sent to live in protection camps with no guarantee of safety. The LRA led massacres against people, including those of Acholi origin. My focus today is on the plight of children during this wartime. Reports from the UN suggest that, barring a few senior officials of the LRA, most of the members were forced recruits who were abducted as children. It's difficult to accurately determine the number of children who were abducted, but studies say it's around 30 to 60,000 children. These children were forced to be laborers, were trained as military combatants, and endured sexual abuse and violence, with girls being forced to become wives of LRA soldiers. It is horrific that the children went through all this and more from the young ages of 6 to 8. The LRA violated all the 6 grave violations established by the UN in relation to the treatment of children during armed conflict, and the International Court of Justice is pursuing charges against LRA leaders. However, the emphasis should not only be on legal justice and reimbursement in Uganda for the internally displaced persons, but also on the reintegration of children into the community. The children who were abducted during the LRA conflict face several barriers in reintegration presently. Many of the abducted children were returned to their parents and relatives by 2006 after the LRA left Uganda and settled in neighboring regions like South Sudan. Childhoods were lost in the war. At the age when the children should have been in schools, they were instead forced to commit atrocities against their families and were exposed to intense violence. This not only led to mental trauma and difficulty resuming normal life, but also left the children with no education or skills to support themselves. This lack of education and resources poses a direct threat to their survival and security as they are unable to get jobs, sustain their livelihoods, or lead independent lives. Uganda lacks the infrastructure to support the educational journey of these children and fast track their skill training. This would also increase the vulnerability of the children to sexual exploitation, where they may be forced to trade sex work for food and shelter. The potential risks of this include health insecurity in the form of sexually transmitted infections and further trauma. Numerous abducted children face conflict-related sexual violence in the form of forced marriages, sexual abuse, forced pregnancies, etc. Victims who return home pregnant after the conflict describe facing social rejection, prolonged resentment in the society, and trials in personal relationships. The hardships that victims of CRSV face after returning to society are important to address. Reporting such incidents is incredibly difficult for survivors for many reasons. Hence, the society needs to unite and create a supportive and safe environment for these victims to access the mental health care that they require. Everyone deserves a chance to restart their lives feeling healthy in every sphere. Connection and a sense of belonging is crucial for humans to survive. Returned children in Northern Uganda continue to strive for acceptance and connection as their community holds prejudices and false fears leading to isolation. The children undertake traditional religious cleansing when they come back, as it is believed that the sins they committed with the LRA must be cleansed. This is unfair because despite undergoing this cleansing, the community harbors fears that the children share Koni's beliefs and do not deserve to reconnect. There is also a lack of sufficient resources to support the children with mental health services. Local help is not equipped to address advanced mental health problems, and this may not improve a child's long-term health, growing the chances of relapse. The presence of a supportive community in Uganda will go a long way in helping these children heal from their trauma and readjust to normal life. Hence, it is important for organizations to bridge the gap between returned children and their communities. To conclude, I would like to emphasize on the importance of rebuilding and reintegration of children into the society after the LRA conflict in Uganda. The struggle is far from over as efforts continue to be made by organizations like UNICEF and Save the Children to help the children there. The situation in Northern Uganda requires prolonged commitment and support to overcome the social, economic, and psychological barriers faced by these children and ensure that their basic human needs and fundamental rights are met. I would like to thank you all for listening. Please do share my story and help me create awareness for the children in Uganda. Thank you.